My parents, Mark and Kimberly. Ari, Silicon Valley royalty. Venture capital titans. You've seen their names on tech blogs and keynote speaker lists. They don't just attend parties. They are the party. They built an empire on predicting the future, on finding the next big thing. But it wasn't always like this. 10 years ago, their first firm was circling the drain. They were overleveraged, panicked, and days away from complete collapse. They were about to lose everything. While they were building their first failed empire, my grandfather Walter was the only one who ever really saw me. He didn't care about stock options or IPOs. He'd come to my free clinic in San Jose, look at the patched up walls and the secondhand furniture, and he'd smile. He understood what I was building. When he passed, he left me a significant private trust, a just-in-case fund. He'd called it. I was 22 years old, watching my parents' world crumble. So I made a choice. I took my inheritance, the money from the only man who understood me, and I saved them. I didn't just write them a check. That would have been too simple. Too honest. They would have choked on the shame. No. I did it their way. I set up a shell corporation. I hired a lawyer to act as a proxy. I became their silent angel investor. They never knew. They celebrated. They told stories for years about the mystery tycoon who saw their genius and saved them at the 11th hour. They never once suspected it was me. The quiet daughter. The failure who was wasting her potential on a free clinic. And ever since then, I've been their safety net. The profits from that initial investment, my investment, I just let them roll over. I used them to secretly pay the bills they couldn't really afford. The ones that kept their perfect image intact. The staggering property taxes on that Napa Valley estate. That was me. My sister Chloe's $80,000 a year Stanford tuition me. The catering for their last 5 power dinners. Me. 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 I kept my apartment small. I drove a 10-year-old car. I poured everything I had into my clinic. And I paid their bills. Telling myself, that's what family does. You show up. You support each other. You don't keep score. Now, staring at that text message, I saw the truth. I wasn't a family member. I was an unsecured line of credit. And they had just defaulted. They were using the very wealth I had built and protected to buy me out. To offer me $50,000 as a charity gift from an estate I had personally financed. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was a hostile takeover. And I was the one they were liquidating. At 7 a.m. My phone didn't just ring. It screamed. I was at my kitchen table, nursing my first cup of coffee, staring at the wall. I hadn't slept. I'd just been waiting. My mother's name, Kimberly, flashed on the screen. I let it ring. A second later, a voicemail notification popped up. Then a text. Then another call. I finally picked it up on the 4th ring and just held it to my ear. Silent. Desi, what did you do? Her voice wasn't worried. It was frantic. High-pitched with Silicon Valley inconvenience. The event planners just called. They said the corporate card was declined. The Napa card, Desi. The party is tomorrow, Chloe's acquisition party. What is wrong with you? You are ruining everything. I said nothing. I just listened to her breathe. That sharp, impatient sound. I'd known my whole life. I don't know what kind of childish tantrum this is. She snapped. But you fix it. You fix it right now. Do you have any idea how many important people are coming? I pressed the red icon on my screen. Ending the call. My phone buzzed in my hand. A text from Chloe. Seriously, you're trying to ruin my big day, just because you're jealous. That's pathetic. Even for you. Pathetic. The girl whose Stanford tuition I'd paid for just called me pathetic. Another buzz. A voicemail from my father. Mark. I hit play and put it on speaker. I don't know what game you're playing. Desi. His voice was low. The one he used in boardrooms. But it stops. Now. You are embarrassing this family in front of our investors. Whatever this is, handle it. You're being childish. I sat there, in the silence, listening to the words echo. Ruin. Pathetic. Embarrassing. Childish. Not one of them said, Desi, what's wrong? Not one of them said, did you see Mom's text last night? Not one of them showed a single shred of remorse for the 1151 p.m. text. They weren't horrified by what they had done. They were just inconvenienced by my reaction. Any lingering guilt I had, any voice in my head that whispered I was being too harsh, it just evaporated. It was gone. All that was left was a cold, hard clarity. This wasn't a family. This was a hostile business. And I was done being their funding. I didn't text them back. I scrolled through my contacts, past their names, and found the one I needed. Arthur. He was 75. My grandfather, Walter's best friend, and the executor of his will. He was the only person who knew about the private trust Walter had left me. He picked up on the first ring. Arthur, I said, my voice steady. It didn't even shake. Desi, I was wondering when you'd call. I need a lawyer. Arthur, not an executor. A lawyer. What's happened? I kept it simple. I kept the emotion out of it. Mark and Kimberly are attempting to buy me out of the family trust for $50,000. They're trying to sever me from the estate. I need you to look at the paperwork. I heard him sigh. A long, weary sound. Of course they are. Send it over. There's one more thing, I said, looking at the spreadsheet I'd kept for 10 years. I've been paying the mortgage and property taxes on the Napa estate for the last 5 years. Undocumented. I want to be repaid. I want to put a lien on the property. There was a long pause. Alien, Arthur repeated. His voice wasn't sad. It sounded impressed. That's a very specific, very non-emotional request. This isn't an emotional situation anymore. Arthur, it's an audit. Good, he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. Your grandfather Walter always said you were the sharpest one. It's about time you used those teeth. Send me everything. Desi. Every receipt. I'll handle it. I hung up and started a new email. I attached the spreadsheets, the bank transfers, the scanned tax documents. I sent it all. This was no longer a tantrum. It was a professional escalation. Arthur called me back 2 hours later. His voice wasn't warm or empathetic. It was cold. It was the voice of a man who had just read the fine print on a declaration of war. Desi, he said, and the iciness in his tone made my stomach clench. It's worse than you think, and it's better than you can imagine. What do you mean the lien? Forget the lien, he said sharply. The lien is a splinter. We're talking about the whole forest. This isn't about you paying their mortgage. Desi, this is about your grandfather's entire will. I stopped. Arthur, what are you talking about? Grandfather's will was settled 10 years ago. Mark, my father. He manages the family trust. No, Arthur said. Mark manages the daily trust. The small one. The allowance he set up for himself. Your grandfather, Walter, was a brilliant man, and he didn't trust his son. He set up a primary will, a master trust. That was completely separate. It was locked, and it was set to be triggered by one of two conditions: Mark's death, or a documented attempt by Mark to defraud another family member. That text your mother sent you last night, that was the trigger. My head was spinning. What? What does it control? Everything, Arthur said. The company, the Napa estate, the stock portfolios, $120 million. I sat down. I couldn't feel my legs. And the conditions. This is the part you need to hear. Desi, this is what Walter spent the last 10 years of his life doing. The will isn't based on blood. It's based on auditable, ethical impact. He had both you and Chloe. Watched. Not spied on. Audited. He kept files. Thick ones. I was speechless. Let me read you the summary, Arthur said. And I heard him turn a page. Chloe. Job title, AI Ethics Strategist. Salary $450,000 per year. A wonderful success. He paused. Walter's audit found that in her capacity as ethics strategist, Chloe personally signed off on 3 facial recognition algorithms that were later proven to be racially biased. Her company quietly settled 3 class action lawsuits. Her entire job, Walter wrote, was to ethics. Wash a corporation that was actively doing harm. She wasn't an ethicist. She was the alibi. May God. And then there's you, Desi. Arthur's voice softened for the first time. The failure. The one working at the little free clinic. Walter's audit found that during the pandemic, your clinic saved 312 families from eviction. It found that you used $80,000 of your own trust fund to finance a local rehab program. He has letters. He has testimonials. He has copies of your bank statements. He has everything. Tears were blurring my vision. He saw it all. Walter knew this would happen, Arthur said, his voice quiet. He understood the family's psychology. In his notes, he wrote that Mark and Kimberly needed a star Chloe to validate their success. But to make a star shine that brightly, they needed a failure to create the darkness. You, Desi. You were cast as the family scapegoat. It was a role they assigned you. A burden you were forced to carry. But it was never, ever who you were. I let out a sob I hadn't realized I was holding. He also wrote about the will. Arthur continued. He said, "This isn't about money, Arthur. It's about the currency of values," he said. My family, Mark, Kimberly, they trade in the currency of status. Chloe trades in the currency of achievement. But Desi and I, we trade in the currency of impact. This will," he wrote, "is just my way of converting my entire estate into the only currency that matters. $120 million. Arthur," I whispered. "What happens now?" "Now," Arthur said. "Now, we go to the party." I went to the party, the one I'd paid for. The Napa estate was a monument to Silicon Valley minimalism, all glass, steel, and exposed concrete. It was also, as I'd planned, a complete disaster. The grand entryway, usually filled with flowers, was barren. The custom-lit bars were empty, staffed by 2 panicked-looking temps who were clearly out of their depth. My mother had managed to get some last-minute catering. It looked like bulk-bought cheese platters, but the 5-star, open-flame grill station I'd canceled was just a sad, empty stone slab. My father, Mark, and my mother, Kimberly, intercepted me at the door. Their faces were tight, with an anger they were desperately trying to mask in front of their guests. "You," my mother hissed, grabbing my arm. Her grip was like talons. "You nearly ruined this. You nearly ruined us. This party is a mess. Desi," my father muttered, smiling falsely at a passing tech CEO. "Whatever point you thought you were making, you've made it. Now go to the back. Get a drink. And don't speak to anyone." I just looked at them, the king and queen of the valley, terrified of being embarrassed by the mess they had created. I didn't go to the back. I got a glass of water and I waited. I found Arthur standing by a glass wall overlooking the vineyard. He just nodded at me. Once. We didn't need to speak. Half an hour later, my father, Mark, stepped onto the small stage. Tapping the microphone, the feedback squealed. "Friends, investors, welcome," he boomed, his voice echoing with false confidence. "We are here tonight to celebrate my brilliant daughter, Chloe, and the acquisition of her company." Polita applause. "We're celebrating the future," he continued. "And, as with all big moves, we're also taking a moment to clean up some family business." My stomach didn't drop. It didn't lurch. It just felt cold. This was it. Kimberly and Chloe joined him on stage. Chloe was glowing in a custom-designed dress that probably cost more than my car. She was holding an elegant, cream-colored envelope. My mother, Kimberly. I took the microphone. She looked straight at me, her smile dripping with pity that was meant for public consumption. "My other daughter, Desi, is here tonight," she said, pointing me out. 200 heads turned. 200 phones, held by the most powerful people in Silicon Valley, slowly raised up to record. "Desi, My love. Kimberly cooed. We love you. But we all know you've chosen a different path. A smaller life. And we respect that. So, to help you stabilize that wonderful little life of yours, your father and I want to give you this. She called it a charity gift. $50,000. She announced to the room. To help you. Sweetie. The room awed. They were applauding my public execution. Chloe stepped forward, gliding down the steps. She walked right up to me. The cameras following her. She held out the $50,000 check. And a folded, legal document. Just sign this. Desi. She whispered. Her voice honey-sweet and laced with arsenic. It just confirms that this is a full and final payment from the family estate. It's for the best. Just sign. I looked at the paper. The buyout. The final insult. That won't be necessary. The voice cut through the silence like a razor. It was Arthur. He walked past me, parting the crowd, and stepped right onto the stage. He took the microphone from my father's stunned hand. Good evening, Arthur said, his voice carrying an authority that silenced the entire valley. I am Arthur, executor of the Walter estate. My parents' faces went white. And you? Arthur said, pointing not at me, but at Mark, Kimberly, and Chloe. You have just activated the ethical forfeiture clause. The room didn't just get quiet. It felt like all the oxygen had been sucked out of it. 200 tech billionaires and venture capitalists were frozen, staring. My father, Mark, was the first to speak. What did you say? I said. Arthur repeated, his voice dangerously calm. That you just activated Article 12. Section C of Walter's will. He called it the ethical forfeiture clause. Mark looked around wildly, trying to find his lawyer in the crowd. That's nonsense. You can't just... Zeitz my assets. I'm not seizing anything. Mark, Arthur said. Your father did. 10 years ago. He wrote that any attempt by the family to monetize a family relationship, for instance, publicly offering one heir a $50,000 check to buy out their claim on the estate would result in the immediate and permanent forfeiture of all assets and all control. Mark lunged for the microphone. This is my money. This is my house. No, Arthur said. It was Walter's money, which you mismanaged. It was Walter's house, which Desi has been paying the taxes on. You didn't just trigger the clause. You were the trap Walter set for himself. You were the proof. He turned his iPad to face the crowd. On the screen was a live video feed of a lawyer in a suit. The trustees' legal team has been monitoring this live stream, Arthur announced. Your access to all family accounts was frozen exactly 60 seconds ago. Chloe let out a sound, a small, strangled gasp. No. My career. My acquisition contract. Furthermore, Arthur continued, his voice resonating with the finality of a gavel, the forfeiture clause also activated the emergency fund. The entire $120 million from the will, plus the $30 million emergency fund. A total of $150 million is now transferred, fully and legally, to the sole beneficiary, Desi. My parents look like ghosts. Mark, Kimberly. They were bankrupt. In public. In front of everyone. Kimberly was the first to move. She ran, stumbling in her heels, and grabbed my arm. Her face was a mess of tears and smeared makeup. Desi, please, you have to do something. You can stop this. You're ruining us. Please. Baby. Please. I looked at my mother. The woman who had hearted my execution notice. The woman who, 20 minutes ago, had called my life small. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just calmly took out my phone. I opened my email. Found the PDF Arthur had sent me. The one with the official court-stamped order. I held the screen up for her to see the frozen accounts. I already did. Mom. I turned and walked away. I walked past Chloe, who was sobbing into her hands. I walked past my father, who was just staring. Broken. at the empty stage. I walked out of the glass doors, past the chaotic party, out of the Napa estate I had paid for, and left them all behind in the mess they had built. 6 months later, I didn't sell the Napa estate. I transformed it. It's now the headquarters for the $150 million Ethical Tech and Mental Health Foundation, a watchdog group and think tank dedicated to holding Silicon Valley accountable, a place for ethicists and social workers to monitor the very industry that tried to erase me. I gave my family a choice. Not revenge. Rehabilitation. Mark and Kimberly. Bankrupt and socially exiled. Now, volunteer 20 hours a week at my free clinic in San Jose. It's a condition for receiving their living stipend from the foundation. They're learning to trade in a new currency. They're learning to measure impact, not profit. Chloe. She lost everything. Her job. Her reputation. The acquisition was voided due to the ethics violations Walter's audit uncovered. She was blacklisted. I offered her a job. She now runs a new nonprofit, funded by my foundation, dedicated to exposing the exact kind of unethical AI she used to approve. Her salary is $50,000 a year, the exact amount of the check she tried to hand me. I'm back at my clinic in San Jose, sitting at my old, beat-up desk. I opened my laptop and found that old spreadsheet, the one where I tracked all the secret payments I'd made to my family, the mortgage, the tuition, the party security. I looked at the grand total one last time. Then I highlighted the file. And I hit delete. That night, for the first time in years, I slept all the way through till morning. If this story helped you realize your own value, please share it with someone you think needs to hear it. And remember, sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one with the most powerful impact.